Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Janamalaba Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Gopi Janamalaba Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Jasodanandana Jaya Parjanaranjana Jaya Jasodanandana Jaya Parjanaranjana Jaya Jasodanandana Jaya Parjanaranjana Jaya Jasodanandana Jaya Prajanaranjana Jaya Jamunatiravanachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jamunatiravanachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Jamunatiravanachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Kodanitai Jaya Mayapur Sashi Jaya Kodanitai Jaya Mayapur Sashi Shishkod Nitai Lai Prashashi Ki Jai Shitos Nath Maharaj Ki Jai Shigir Lai Ki Jai Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai Srimad Vrinda Devi Ki Jai Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai Nitai Gaur Premanandi. So reading from Srila Prabhupada Leelamrita, chapters entitled Chant Hare Krishna and Fight. Prabhupada thanked the devotees present for working in Krishna consciousness, and he reiterated his familiar formula that American brains and American money combined with Indian culture could turn the whole world into heaven. Later, Srila Prabhupada went to oversee the new building, the longest building in West Bengal. Jayapataka Swami said, more than 700 feet. Srila Prabhupada said it looks like a train. He inspected all the rooms one by one and emphasized that they must be ready in time for the festival. Walking along the veranda, he remarked, "Oh, it is just like Fifth Avenue." The next few days were quiet. Prabhupada would sit taking his massage in the late morning on the roof amid hundreds of potted plants. Leaning on the rail of the veranda outside his room one day, he looked down onto the lawn where one of the women was picking flowers for the deities. "This is temple," he said. "Always something going on." And with each flower she picked, she advances in spiritual life a little more. Prabhupada particularly liked the Mayapur Chandradoy Mandir, liked that the Mayapur Chandradoy Mandir was always being expanded and improved. He liked to look out from the veranda and see guests arriving, devotees working, and new plans manifesting. But Prabhupada's ill health persisted, an imbalance of Pitta and Vayu, bile and air, he said. One morning when his servant asked him how he felt, he said, "Very bad." But sometimes after a very bad morning, he would feel much better. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 13, entitled Rahugana Converses with Jad Bharat, on text 17. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Tai Vanchito Hamsa Kulam Samavisham. Tai Vanchito Hamsa Kulam Samavisham. Arochayan Shilam Vipaiti Vanaran. Arochayan Shilam Vipaiti Vanaram. Tajjati Rasena Sunirvritendriya. Tajjati Rasena Sunirvritendriya. Paraspada Vikshana Vismitavidi. Paraspada Vikshana Vismitavidi. Taivanchito Vamsakulam Samavishan. Arocharan Shilam Apaiti Vanaran. Chachjati Rasena Sunir Vitendriya. Parasparut Vikshana Vismritavati. Taivanchito Vamsa Kulam Samavishan. Arochayan Shilam Vipaiti Vanaran. Tajjati Rasena Sunir Vitendriya. Parasparut Vikshana Vismritavati
Raspurodvikshadvisvitavati
Taivanchito Hamsakulam Samavisan
Taivanchitoham sukalam samavisham
Arochayan Shilam Apaiti Papanaran
Arochayan Shilavaiti Dhanava
Chatjati Rasena Sunirvitandriya
Jati Rasana Suni Vitandriya
Parasparot Vikshana Vismritavati
Raspurodvikshadvisvitavati Taivanchitoham sukalam samavisham
Ansito Vansavilam Vishan
Arochayan Shilavaiti Dhanava
Arochayan Shilam Apaiti Vanara
Jati Rasana Suni Vitandriya
Tachati Rasena Sunirvitandriya Tai by them, the cheaters and pretenders, the so-called yogis, swamis, incarnations, and gurus.
The so-called yogis, swamis, incarnation, gurus.
Vanchita,
Vanchita,
being cheated.
being cheated.
Hamsakulam,
Hamsikulam,
the association of great Paramahamsas or
the
devotees.
association of great Paramahamsas or devotees.
Samavishan,
Samavishan,
contacting.
contacting.
Arochayan,
Arochayan,
not being satisfied with.
not being satisfied with.
Shilam,
Shilam,
so Shilam, their behavior.
their behavior.
Upayati,
Piety,
approaches.
approaches.
Vanaran,
Anaran,
the monkeys, which are all debauchees with no good character. Tatjati rasena,
the Jati Rasina,
by sense gratification in the association of such debauchees.
by sense gratification and association of such devotees.
Sunirvita indriya,
Sunivitindriya,
being very satisfied with getting the opportunity of sense gratification.
being very satisfied with getting the opportunity of sense gratification.
Paraspara,
Paraspara,
of one another.
of one another.
Udvikshana,
Udvikshana,
by seeing the faces.
by seeing the faces.
Vismrita,
Vismrita,
who has forgotten.
who has forgotten.
Avadhi,
Abadi,
the end of life.
at the end of life.
Translation of Prabhupada. Being cheated by them, the living entity in the forests of the material world tries to give up the association of these so-called yogis, swamis, and incarnations, and comes to the association of real devotees. But due to his misfortune, he cannot follow the instructions of the spiritual master or advanced devotees. Therefore, he gives up their company and again returns to the association of monkeys who are simply interested in sense gratification and women. He derives satisfaction by associating with sense gratifiers and enjoying sex and intoxication. In this way, he spoils his life simply by indulging in sex and intoxication. Looking into the faces of other sense gratifiers, he becomes forgetful and thus approaches death. Purport. Sometimes a foolish person becomes disgusted with bad association and comes to the association of devotees and Brahmins and takes initiation from a spiritual master. As advised by the spiritual master, he tries to follow the regulative principles, but due to his misfortune, he cannot follow the instructions of the spiritual master. He therefore gives up the company of devotees and goes to associate with simian people who are simply interested in sex and intoxication. Those who are so-called spiritualists are compared to the monkeys. Outwardly, monkeys sometimes resemble sadhus because they live naked in the forest and pick fruits, but their only desire is to keep many female monkeys and enjoy sex life. Sometimes Spiritualists seeking a spiritual life come to associate with Krishna conscious devotees, but they cannot execute the regulative principles or follow the path of spiritual life. Consequently, they leave the association of devotees and go to associate with sense gratifiers, who are compared to monkeys. Again, they revive their sex and intoxication, and looking at one another's faces, they are thus satisfied. In this way, they pass their lives up to the point of death. Anjika Puchubhishchak, Vasudabhya Vichapatitanam Pavnibhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Dvaita Gadadhara Shri Vasari Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare. So Prabhupada's continuing to, with this chapter and Prabhupada's commentary, is continuing to describe the plight of the conditioned soul in the material world, and making obvious its futility, futile attempts in trying to enjoy. So in the verse it's saying how, mentioning being cheated, how the conditioned soul is being cheated, and by misleaders, and he may get frustrated by that and come to associate with real devotees. And Prabhupada mentioned it as a misfortune that he's not able to take up the instructions, take the instructions of such devotees very seriously, and returns to the association of the monkey-like association of sense gratifiers and women hunters. So, so many issues that in the world that seem to be failing in their attempts to cure, like there's so many problems with like crime rate and ill health, and physical and mental, and so many like the environment as well, the plight of the environment and its degradation. But there's simple answers to all these apparent insurmountable problems. They're insurmountable because people take materialistic, trying to make up materialistic methods of trying to solve these problems. But because they're so infatuated by the desire to enjoy, they can't solve these problems because it takes some austerity, takes some just to be in contact with real knowledge, because that seems to be something, presents some austerity or sense that reduction of sense gratification for a few, then it's not pursued. So in this way, this is the world of the cheaters and the cheated. For example, it's known how the planet can't the planet can't produce enough for the demands that are there, both human and like in keeping livestock. So they're saying how if it's cut by half, then it would be sustainable. And but that other half is taken, but it's not. It's then they know that if that other half is taken up by livestock, maintaining livestock for mass slaughter, but they won't give it up because there's so much money involved, which is the source of which provides for their sense gratification. So in so many ways, this is the problem, where the solution is simple, but due to the desire for such a strong desire for sense gratification, then the cheating propensity is so strong to satisfy the greed and lust that perpetuates the problem. And this is all due to the bodily conception of life, having no knowledge of their spiritual identity and nature and their real home in the spiritual world. So in this way, we have a situation where the blind is leading the blind. And with no hope of having any knowledge of anything else except for the devotees, the real devotees who have a higher taste, who can show them the value of spiritual life. So the conditioned living entity is bombarded by the objects of sense gratification, and in this way, he's like a donkey chasing the carrot that's just tied in front of him, just like a bait to and hit the carrot's always staying the same distance away, but he still continues trying to chase it. So it's such a sad situation when the conditioned soul doesn't have no clue of his real situation, how he has his real family. Like it's just like seeing a poor man in the street and someone recognizing him to be a rich man's son, and approaches him, "What are you doing here? You know, why don't you come back home? Your father's waiting for you. He's worried and would like to see that you're happily situated." So the devotees take on this position where they approach the conditioned souls and try and remind them of their spiritual identity and nature, that they're not that body, they're not the down and out of the material world, but they have their real home where they're surrounded by unconditional love by Krishna and his associates. This is what the living entity is always pining for. but seeks in the spiritual and seeks that spiritual satisfaction in something that's material, seeking something eternal that's in a place where everything is temporary. So it's a bygone conclusion that he's defeated at every step. So as it was described before, how his attempts are like seeing a mirage and in the desert and hoping to get happiness from that. And he's disappointed every time. It's compared to the happiness of the material world is compared to a drop in the desert. What value is a drop in the desert when you're hungry and so thirsty? So Krishna, that's why Krishna came to attract us back to him with his pastimes, showing him how he's by his association one can be really happy. Shishikona time Prashashiki Jai. So it says in the last line, the purport here, again they revive their sex and intoxication, and looking at one another's faces, they are thus satisfied. In this way, they pass their lives up to the point of death. So this can be like in reference to watching movies that like you're looking at different faces and the different expressions, going through different illusory experiences that filmmakers are expert at drawing in the audience into the storyline. And it's a kind of mechanical thing, but because but still the audience get absorbed, and because it gets the emotions rising in some way, then they think it's a good film. There's nothing at the end of it. There's no gain. It's just like another dream. But because it's so normal that everybody's doing it, then it's taken as reality. So it's so important for the devotees to come and contact with the conditioned souls, engage them in somehow in Krishna service, chanting holy name, sing how we're satisfied and practicing in our spiritual life, and in this way attract as many people as possible in that way. And so for ourselves, we have to guard against the illusion that, that there is happiness in this world. We think, if we're thinking that that we deserve so much, or we have a sense of entitlement, then Krishna may put us into situations where that we come across some difficulty, where we may be afflicted by become afflicted. Lessons may come in the form of a disease or some financial upheaval, dishonor. So in this way, we're meant to reflect and introspect and see how it's not worth it. To see, and in this way, hold on to Krishna's lotus feet, praying to him, and for his help to navigate our way through this lifetime, so that we can be practiced in seeing him as our only shelter. And in this way, that we become convinced, without a doubt, that he is the only shelter in this world. And so anything that comes upon us, that we see as his mercy to bring us closer to him, dissolve the false ego and its misidentification with the body and with the mind. By the mercy of the spiritual master's instructions, we can be successful in our attempts. So I'll stop there. If there's any comments or questions. So in the material world,
Yes, in the verse 9, in this verse, it doesn't actually talk about taking shelter of the lotus feet of Krishna. It's talking about taking shelter of the company of devotees.
Mm-hmm.
So, we're fortunate to live in the association of many devotees. So, why do we need to see that only the lotus feet of Krishna is our shelter, considering we've got the shelter of so many devotees?
Well, they're representing Krishna's shelter. It's because of their connection with Krishna that the association is so valuable. And to take on board that, our real identification is that we are a servant of Krishna, and Krishna is pleased by pleasing his devotees. He takes that as more valuable than service to himself. It's like, when you're training to fly a plane, there's so much training on the ground, in the classroom, how to do so. But when it comes to actually doing it, then one has to be so well equipped that one is capable of flying one's own plane. And with this, by being able to do so, one can be strong enough to bring other people into Krishna consciousness. And
So you see that by the time you take off, then at that point, you need to have learned how to take shelter of Krishna at that time. That you're taking the association of the devotees and the spiritual masters to enable you to take shelter of Krishna when you're when you're making your maiden flight. So in that sense.
Every moment of the day. And they're helping us to establish our relationship with Krishna. They're doing it for us, they're giving that instruction for our sake, not for their sake per se, but they'll get benefit from it, but it's ultimately to help us become strong in our faith and determination and conviction in that Krishna's God, He's the enjoyer, He's in control. Nothing happens without His, not the blade grass moves without His sanction, so what to speak of everything that happens to us is all meant for a purpose. And to increase our faith and conviction that, yes, He is the Supreme Lord and He is the best friend, the best person we could ever wish to meet. So we see Krishna's hand in our lives and by the devotees. You know, we may pray to the deities and so on, but their answer comes via devotee. And we have that connection with Krishna. Our position in the spiritual world is that we're one of His associates, engaged in some unconditional loving relationship, either parental, as a friend, as a subordinate in some way, or as a lover of Krishna. So we're trying to become reinstated in one of those relationships. It's always one of servitude. So that once we become expert in that, then we become eligible to have our original relationship revealed to us. According to Krishna's big will, or to the spiritual master, when he thinks we're ready.
So the spiritual master and the devotees, they're teaching us how to embrace the mood of servitude, and that being fully absorbed in that mood will like override our desire for sense gratification. Will that actually happen? Will that, at a certain point, will that actually be the case? If you see it in the verse, it said that the person comes to the genuine devotee, comes to associate with Krishna conscious devotees, but they cannot execute the regulative principles. So you can only assume that that's because their desire for sense gratification is so strong. So by what is the thing, what is the stage, or what is the activity that destroys that or overpowers that desire for sense gratification, which enables the devotee, or enables the aspirant devotee to stay in the association of devotees and to actually follow the path of spiritual life. What's the actual key factor?
And to just give up the low taste, one has to gain the higher taste. And that's the only way one can give up the low taste. So the higher taste is knowing the value of Krishna consciousness and its practices. And high taste is getting the taste for service and so on. Because there's two ways of being happy. One is by satisfying the body and the mind in some way directly, or by satisfying the senses of Krishna. And when we do so, we feel naturally happy, because Krishna's in our heart. So by pleasing the spiritual master and acting and according to his instructions, performing our prescribed duty, then we can be overwhelmed with happiness. In that, and there may be some struggles and so on, but Krishna always, somewhere along the line, gives us some inspiring experience that helps us to keep going and increases our faith. There's so many things in the Shastra I could go on to describing the life on other planets, but these things we can't directly experience, but that which we can experience gives us that direct perception of how genuine this knowledge is. So unless we practice, if we're not getting these realizations, then we're doing something wrong somewhere along the line, and therefore it's for us to take advantage of the association of devotees to point us in the right direction, to highlight where it is we're going wrong. Because we can't. It's like we go back to God. It's not I go back to Godhead. We're taking each other back to Godhead. So in that sense, we're not alone. It may be difficult in some ways. We may find some ways easier. Some practices difficult than others. We could find some practices easier than others. So in this way we can complement each other by helping each. Where we're strong at, we can help those who are weak in the same thing. Or where we're weak at, we can take advantage of those who are stronger. Same practice.
Thank you. Nice meditation.
Because everybody's got something to offer. Because we're all unique no two souls are the same. Krishna's created so many living entities because of that particular happiness. They've got something that can make them happy in a particular way, and he's missing that from everyone. And so he wants us back more than we want to go. He loves us as we are, but he loves us too much to let stay that way. So for us to have some confidence in that and consciously practice Krishna consciousness, consciously practice Krishna consciousness in our day-to-day activities, especially when we're chanting. And otherwise it's just as Mahatma says in his chapter affirmations, if it got everything at the start of it thinking, another 2 hours of just not getting anywhere, then we kind of give ourselves a self-fulfilling prophecy. So if we're really taking association with devotees, then we do become inspired. This is just a natural consequence. Because they're trying to give us Krishna, so any way we come in contact with Krishna, it's relishable. So if we're not experiencing that, then are we taking association with devotees? Are we accepting their instructions and taking it to heart? One quick way is of getting that taste is kirtan, and also kirtan in the form of reciting and discussing Srila Prabhupada's books. And in this way we can see so many angles of vision that we can, outside of our own, which can be so inspiring and insightful, and give us more determination, empowers us to have more determination to really go for the goal. Because it's not enough just to be like in a certain ashram or in a holy place. And there's danger at every step. We could perks that come that may help make us think we're better than everybody else, or comfortable in our situation, have comfort zones and things. We've got some relief from the onslaught of material energy. But once some people get that relief, then because that's enough for them to think that they've made it, then they leave the association with devotees. They weren't very sincere in that regard. They didn't see the real value. It's just like the woman in the forest having the bottle sticks, and she's praying, and it falls down off her shoulders. She's so old she can't pick it up, and she sincerely prays the Lord to please help her. And the Lord appears. She could have asked for liberation, always to be engaged in the Lord's service. But what did she do? She asked, "Can you put the six back on my shoulder?" It's a wasted opportunity. So we've got such an opportunity here. We don't want to waste it. We've come in contact with Krishna's devotees, and they've given us so much. So we've made so much progress. So just the fact that we're here. So not to waste that opportunity and become misfortunate, as Prabhupada says. They miss the fortune and take something so cheap. Take something so cheap in this place. Whether it's sex or intoxication, whether it's some illusion. These are one illusions of but we accept some illusion instead of the real thing. So it's important for us to keep in association with devotees that we're not mising like a needle out like a plough. So the smallest, it may seem like an insignificant thing that's something that makes us feel inferior, or something that makes us feel superior, and that widens to the point where we're so engrossed in some illusion that it takes a lot of effort to come out of it. And so, as Prabhupada said, the association with devotees is the safest place. But we've got to. It's not like going to the holy place and just taking a bath. And going to a holy place means meeting sacred people there, and who wait for us to come to them to inspire us in our spiritual life and to make this human form of life a success. So thank you very much for your presence and question. If there's nothing else, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Prabhupada ki jai, Sangha ki jai, Sangha Vrinda ki jai.